We are the Ministry of the Real Truth, and pretty much near the end of our first video, we got banging on the door. Somebody down the road wanting something. We tried to ignore it, but somebody else obviously attended to it. They're obviously in need of something, as they are every week. Yeah, we don't mind, but it's just continual, you know. They need to learn better money management skills and so forth. Anyway, we're continuing our review of Victor N. Alexander's website, his former va.com, which was taken down for various reasons, as he stated in our first video. And here is some extras for him, or from him rather, post-mortem essays, new essays and so forth, and we're going to have a quick look at those. Here we are at details of his translation project. Jesus the Messiah spoke in the Galilean dialect of the ancient Aramaic language. This is the language in which the disciples and the apostles preached the gospel and the scribes recorded the scriptures. The New Testament has been preserved in the sacred scribal language since the apostolic age. The whole Bible was originated in this language, because apparently the first language spoken to Adam and Eve, and then by Adam and Eve, and then by the men at the Tower of Babel in Sumer or Shinar desert, geographical desert location, spoke this one language, one to each other, or one to another. So Jesus the Messiah spoke in the Galilean dialect, Galilean-Aramaic, of the ancient Aramaic language. This is the language in which the disciples and the apostles preached the gospel and the scribes recorded the scriptures. The New Testament was preserved in the sacred scribal language. It has been preserved in the sacred scribal language since the apostolic age. The whole Bible was originated in this language. The translation that you would find on his website, this translation project, va.com, when it was up, but it was down and we revived it. And this is what we're bringing to you through our Ministry of the Real Truth YouTube channel and our videos, was made from the original ancient Aramaic scriptures directly into English, the nearest English equivalent, bypassing the eras of the Greek original, the Latin Vulgate, and all the Western, i.e. Americanized English modern Bible versions, made from them. This was an attempt to rekindle, and it still is an attempt to rekindle, the faith in Yeshua, or Yoshua Mashiach, or Jesus the Messiah, according to his teachings. This translation project was an ongoing translation project, and he was getting the book of Isaiah ready for publication at that particular time, probably about 1995, 96, no actually 96, 97, 98, something like that. You can read all of his translations. You could really have read all his translations online if you were a supporter, but as we said, the site was downed, va.com. You could have become a supporter if you purchased a book or made a small donation towards his translation project. The smallest donation made you a supporter, and then he provides more information on a supporters page. You could buy a copy by going to PayPal and paying for it, and it didn't incur postage and handling costs. He was really nice like that. So we got this Aramaic New Testament from him for around about 15 New Zealand dollars. We actually came across a Christian book site, bookshop in a major city, one of our major cities, and they wanted $100 for it. We says, "Oh, why is it so dear?" And she says, "Oh, because nobody ever wanted to buy it." Okay, so we thought, well, stuff that. We can get it off this Victor N. Alexander for way cheaper than that. Okay, so that's what we did. And here are the books that he's translated. He's translated the whole Galilean-Aramaic New Testament into the nearest English equivalent, but he hasn't completed all of the Old Testament because he became sick, went to the hospital, was on meds, and then he became financially insecure because of them taking down his website, him losing money, and then he had to go on social security, etc. Yeah, the Lord's Prayer and other ancient Aramaic audio files. We can bring those to you, but not the video, because the Adobe Flash Player has ended, so we can't play those. And then the Ruffles, supposedly the replacement, is total rubbish. Probably only works for games, Flash games online, but it doesn't work for Flash videos on his particular down website we revived, va.com. Okay, has video files. One video is a recitation of the Lord's Prayer. 3 videos are about Isaiah and the Dead Sea Scrolls, excerpts from the 4 Gospels. Apparently these people that took down his website don't want the Lord's Prayer in Aramaic up online, but it's all over YouTube. Okay, probably the Syriac version, etc. And this is Victor Alexander, the translator's notes. His translation of the scriptures came from a small apostolic church, the ancient Church of the East, a church that nearly disappeared from the map during the Middle Ages. Around about the 13th century, it was destroyed. Yet because of that, it retained the original scriptures intact. They hid them, therefore preserved them for over 2,000 years. There's almost nobody left that can read this language. And so there's nearly nobody left that can read the original Ktav, Ashurit, Galilean-Aramaic, etc. A language that is no longer spoken. However, it is a language that has given birth to those thousands of languages, because it is the original language that the Lord spoke from the beginning of recorded history. Okay, so you probably have the modern Galilean-Aramaic, the modern Syriac, and the modern Koine Greek, which is akin to the Aramaic. Okay, so anyone out there who's saying, "Oh, I speak the original Ktav Ashurit," has to be a really, really old person who can't speak English, so they can't translate it for you, or into English, or a high priest of the Apostolic Church that can read those old manuscripts through their liturgy using the Syriac, with the modern Syriac language, with the modern Galilean-Aramaic. Whether they follow the same method that Victor Alexander, the translator, used to translate that old, dead, no longer written or spoken Ktav Ashurit and Galilean-Aramaic into nearest English equivalent, we don't know. It is called in his translation. There is almost nobody left that can read this language, a language that is no longer spoken. However, it is a language that has given birth to thousands of languages, because it's the original language that the Lord spoke from the beginning of recorded history. It is the language in which the doctrines of the scriptures were nurtured. It is called in this translation, his translation, the ancient Aramaic language. But it is not Aramaic in the modern vernacular, nor is it Hebrew or any other designation that might imply it is open to personal or nationalistic interpretation. This is the language that the Lord chose, Jesus chose. It is the language in which he taught. It is the language he read from. It is the language the apostles spoke. It is the language in which the scriptures were compiled. This is not pride in language. The language is politically dead. It ceased to be used as a literary language in the 13th century. It exists only as a liturgical language, and now as a language of this translation. It is no longer a language of a single race or people, nor is it the native language of any nation. It is a language free of national boundaries. This translation is in English because it is the language in which the world has chosen to communicate. The language of the scriptures must never become subservient to English or any other language. The English language must never be allowed to be the sole vehicle for the scriptures, because this is how false pride, prejudice, and racism begin. As the language of this translation, English is a window to the scriptures. The scriptures can be viewed through this window, but the window must be broken, made into a door or a gateway into a new interpretation, hierarchy, or religious order. And that was written October 16, 2011. Is its translation notes and essays. And it says, for more articles on the Google Dead Sea Scrolls project, you would have to have read the post-mortem essays, articles 16, 17, 18, 20, and 21. More about the language of the scriptures. and there's his project on Indigo, if you wanted to donate to that, as seen in the New York Times or something like that. More about the language of the scriptures. The ancient Aramaic scriptures are now accessible because of this translation project. On this particular website, you could have read the words of the Lord and the sacred writings of the prophets. They are all translated from the original language of the scriptures. The language Joshua, Jesus spoke 2,000 years ago. The language of the Jewish people. These are the tribes of Judah, right? The Yahudai, or the Judeans. The ancient Hebrew or Aramaic. Okay, Aram in the Bible was the forefather of the Arameans. So basically it's the language that he spoke. And this is what that end suffix or prefix means. It belongs to those who possessed it, those who spoke it, from the Latin, the Greek Latin. This is the language that, it's the term, right, for the Greek Latin word, borrowed word. This is the language that modern day theologians refer to as Aramaic. And Victor and Alexander simply identified this language more clearly than the American churches and the Western translators of the Bible. It is wrong to call this language merely Aramaic. Aramaic is a modern language, like modern Hebrew, Arabic, Persian, etc. Many languages of the Middle East and the rest of the world, in fact, have evolved from this first language ever spoken on earth. Therefore, the language of the scriptures should be identified as ancient Aramaic. It is necessary to call it ancient, otherwise everyone can deny that the scriptures were originated in this language, that the creator of the universe and the Lord, that we call our God in the English language, spoke when he walked the earth. This is the language of Adam, Noah, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joshua, or Ishua, or Jesus. It has gone through thousands of years of development, evolving, etc., and use. The ancient Aramaic language of the scriptures is no longer a spoken language. The last time it was used as a literary language was in 1300 AD. Today, the ancient Aramaic remains only as a liturgical language. There are a number of Eastern churches that still use this language in their liturgy. In order for the people of the world to start learning about the scriptures' truth, everyone must come to understand that the Bibles being disseminated or distributed out there into the world today are mostly translated from the English language versions, or they are conformed to the Protestant and Catholic Bibles from various languages. And as we usually do, put as an end screen, Brian with the beard and glasses, the Bible Barbarians research of where those Bibles originated from. From Martin Luther, the translations from Martin Luther, Tyndale, Wycliffe, etc., down to centuries, different church fathers, etc., into modern Americanized English, and then pumped out into the world through the American Bible Society with their pamphlets and their lies contained within. All these Bibles are translations that have been modified as a result of centuries of wars and genocides. Thus, the Bibles of the Western world are not accurate. These Bibles have been leading people astray for 2,000 years. All one has to do is read Victor N. Alexander's translations, as we have done, that have been made directly from the ancient Aramaic scriptures into English, and compare them to all the other Bibles, and it will be clear that there is no way to arrive at a more reasonable conclusion than accepting the simple fact that the ancient Aramaic scriptures are the only authentic scriptures. These are the only authentic scriptures. This translation by Victor N. Alexander is the only one that has been made from the ancient Aramaic scriptures without prejudice, bias, adding to it, taking away from it, adding your own twist, flavour, and so forth. It is made available to you, from this particular website, va.com, when it was up. Posted November 10, 2011. Moving on to the next part of his translation project, the Ashurit. Okay, we're doing this because he's getting older now and he may not be able to afford to put it all back up online, so you can access it. So if you want to donate to him, find his email address, get hold of him and arrange something with him to help him put it back up, if that so be your desire. The Ashurit. It's going to get much worse before it gets better. Survival always depends on whether or not a person can function at the worst of times. So adapt to the situation when you see things aren't going according to your expectations. Americans have expanded the horizons of toleration. Now it is going to be easier to survive if you stay neutral. Don't take sides on political issues. Be charitable in your opinions of others. You can't afford to fight any wars. You are too small. However, you can be like the blade of grass in a storm. Let the wind sweep over you and topple down the big trees. Many places in the Middle East are experiencing a shakedown. Christians are being subjected to genocide after genocide. Some Christians thought they were part of the democratic process, but soon are finding out that they are killed off after the initial uprising resolves itself into a new leadership. So if you are a descendant of the Ashurit, stay out of politics. Some more. Don't rock the boat now regarding your national rights. Okay, we're continuing our look into the translation project of Victor Ian Alexander, his former va.com website, which was taken down, which we revived and present all via our YouTube channel, Ministry of the Real Truth, in our videos. And here he has written, it's going to get much worse before it gets better. Survival all depends on whether or not a person can function at the worst of times. So adapt to the situation when you see things aren't going according to your expectations. Americans have expanded the horizons of toleration. Now it is going to be easier to survive if you stay neutral. Don't take sides on political issues. Be charitable in your opinions of others. You can't afford to fight any wars. You are too small. However, you can be like the blade of grass in a storm. Let the wind sweep over you and topple down the big trees. Many places in the Middle East have experienced a shakedown. Christians were being subjected to genocide after genocide. Some Christians thought they were part of the democratic process, but soon were finding out that they are killed off after the initial uprising resolves itself into new leaderships. So if you're a descendant of the Ashurit, stay out of politics some more. Don't rock the boat now regarding your national rights. Ask only for your human rights, like everyone else. Don't expect too much. Be thankful for the little that you get. Territorial ambitions are not what you should be concerned with, as territories are no longer the issue. The only thing that matters now is who has the most invisible assets. Above all, don't hang a label on yourself and appear as a target to anyone. American Spring. Christians in the Middle East are used to living under Islamic regimes. Now Islam has reared its head in America. It will be interesting if Americans see the parallels of what's happening in Egypt and other Arab countries with the way the Muslims treat the Christians and what is happening in America, how the Christians are going to be treated by an increasingly non-Christian majority. Okay, so if they take over, this is their whole plan, right? To take over, make up their peaceful, this sort of stuff, a peaceful religion, and then there's a call, okay, a shout out to rise up and annihilate, etc., through these extremist factions of Islam. And it won't matter if you are a Christian, a Jew, a Buddhist, a guru that stood on his one foot for 30 years, or an atheist. They will take you out if you don't believe in their one God, Allah, or their Prophet Muhammad. In their Prophet Muhammad, you are all susceptible to their threat. Okay, they will come for you. You are no exception. For the descendants of the Ashurit, Islamic countries are not the place to be. It's always a good time to leave and head for Europe or Australia. You get safety. Self-preservation is the order of the day. Save your life, your faith, and your language. The Lord will take care of the rest. Stay out of politics. Don't even talk about it. This is Victor Ian Alexander's opinion. Somebody else with a different prerogative may tell you something else, or something completely different. Yeah, there's three things you don't talk about, right? Supposedly. Politics, prostitution, and religion. 4th of July. The nation that was a safe haven for Christmas for over 2 centuries is celebrating its Independence Day. Thousands of Christians fled from their countries because they could not worship their God and practice their religion. They sold everything they had, risked everything they had, discarded everything they could not carry, and lost everything they had built for generations. Then one day, when enough non-Christians had immigrated to America, a new generation of Americans decided that the freedom of religion upon which America was established meant that Christianity was no longer the dominant religion and therefore should be discarded, and practicing Christians should be treated as second-class citizens. Therefore, on this Independence Day, on that particular Independence Day, fewer Americans were free to celebrate freedom, because what is the use of freedom if the majority of the people cannot practice their faith? This is the fate of every empire that offers freedom to all the peoples of the world and takes it on themselves to protect the religion of every nation in the world. Happy 4th of July 2011. Stay out of trouble wherever you are. The Egyptian revolution was going to engulf all Arab countries within a few weeks and months. The Middle East was to be totally a new place for the children of Ashurit. This was an opportunity for the followers of Yeshua Mashiach, or Jesus the Messiah, to extricate themselves from the hellfire that would descend on the region. The US, now a multicultural society where the name of Jesus is really mentioned. It's now a society which Jesus is really mentioned. The US policy in the world is going to promote revolution everywhere. These revolutions are going to be in the name of democracy and freedom. These catchwords do not mean anything anymore. Democracy and freedom means people can do whatever they want. For limitations, right? The laws, etc., etc. For you as followers of Yeshua Mashiach, or Jesus the Messiah, there's only one way, a spiritual way that is not dependent on democracy and freedom, but rather following the teachings of Yeshua, or Jesus the Messiah. Yeshua, or Yeshua, or Jesus, is your only guide. With respect to the US congregational hearings regarding the genocide, and goes on about that. First chance, he's talking about the Ashurit people, or the Syrians, get out of Iraq. And wherever else you may be stuck, the Middle East is no longer a home for you or your children at this time in 2011. Okay, so he's trying to encourage them to get out, as possibly he did. Okay, and went to America. Do not pose as Christians in the Middle East. The Muslims think of Christians as the Crusaders. You were never involved with the Crusaders. Okay, the Crusaders in fact killed you when they attacked Jerusalem in the beginning of the second millennium. Be wise as the serpent and pure as the dove, blessing to all children of Asher. Okay, that's the name of God, right? And the Syrian, etc., Mesopotamians. Okay, so if you have a look at Roy Casagrande's Rise to Islam, he basically is saying the same thing. But this particular Muslim, I don't know if it's Omar or Oman, something like that, he was actually a very different, very kind man, by the sounds of it, right? He walked with the Roman captain, or leader, that had gone to Jerusalem, attacked the Jews and burnt them in their temple. And he was walking along with him, and his servant was actually on the horse. And it's like, hey, aren't you supposed to be on the horse? You're the boss. But he let his servant walk, sit on it, right? And he walked with this captain that's talking, right? And she says, the captain says, we can both worship in our church over here, right? You do your thing and we'll do ours in the same church. And this Muslim leader said, no, can't do that because, you're Christian and we're Mohammedan, or Muslim at the time, right? Or Muslim, Muslims. So we need to be in our own mosque. So they took this old ruined mosque, church, and they built that Dome of the Rock, that mosque there, right, and worshipped in there. Okay, but this Mohammedan leader said, hey, where's the Jews? Haven't seen any Jews. He says, oh no, he killed them all off. He burnt them in the temple and all this sort of stuff and chased the others away or something like that. He said, what? How can you have Jerusalem with no Jews? So he told his people to go get some Jews, find some Jews, and put them back in Jerusalem. And that's what they did, right? And apparently when these Mohammedans were fighting these Romans, they were losing or something like that, and they ran off, and they went back to their camps, and their wife says, what the hell are you doing here? Get back there, don't come back, unless you're victorious or dead. So that's what they did. The wives chased them, beat them off, so get back there. That sort of thing. Yeah, it's a really good documentary by Roy Casagrande, Rise of Islam.